Okay.
Okay, sir, I've started, so you can start now.
Monica, please present
Okay,
the
sir.
introductory slide.
Is it visible, sir?
Make it full screen.
Yes, I'll make it full screen. Is it okay, sir?
Mm, no, not still
Yes,
like
it is okay. It is
okay.
visible to me. Yes, you can start.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today we are fortunate to have with us Dr. Vaimanti Biswas, Principal Scientist, Experimental Phytoplankton Ecology Laboratory, Biological Oceanography Division, National Institute of Oceanography, CSIR, Donapola, Goa. She is a world-renowned biogeochemist. Her research area encompasses various aspects of marine biogeochemistry and climate change, marine pollution, nutrient cycling, and impact of ocean acidification on primary producers. She has obtained her PhD in marine science from University of Calcutta, India. She joined as scientist at CSIR National Institute of Oceanography in 2008, and from 2013 to 17, she has been serving as senior scientist at the same institute. Now she is the principal scientist at the same institute. She has many awards and achievements to her credit. Few of them are: she is a recipient of very prestigious DART postdoctoral fellowship and worked at esteemed Humboldt Center for Ocean Research, Kiel, Germany during 2004 and 5. She was start visiting scientist at the same institute during 2006 to 7. She has received DST Fast Track Project Scientist and joined CSIR National Institute of Oceanography in 2008. She was a visiting scientist for 2 months at Lausanne University of Marie Curie 2018. In the same year, she visited IBENS Paris, France as a visiting scientist for 3 weeks. In 2015, she received DART Re-Invitation Fellowship for 2 months and visited world famous Alfred Wegener Institute of Polar and Marine Research, Bremen, Germany. She is one of the members of Scientific Committee on Ocean Research Working Group in the segment of Ocean Biological Response to Climate Change. She has published more than 42 research publications in very highly reputed Oceanography Journal and having a phenomenal 1,171 citations. She has been serving as reviewer for many national international journals and projects. With this introduction, I am requesting Dr. Biswas to deliver her talk titled The Perturbed Biogeochemical Cycles in Anthropocene. Over to you, Dr. Biswas.
Thank you very much, Sumit. That was quite a lot as you briefed about me, and it's always good to know how people think. I'm not still sure if I deserve to have so many compliments. However, I see quite a lot of people joined is more than 150 audience, and I think it is something really interesting to talk about today. I will not give you like a database lecture today, and I welcome you all to know about how we should feel about the environment and Earth as a whole. As a human, we're responsible to keep our nature preserved and what we are doing instead of that. And I continuously feel excited about the environment, and I would like to just transmit my excitement into you guys so that you are the future generations, and the responsibility also goes to everyone. So let us start with that. And you can see the introductory slide. There are three key terms in my talk: perturbed biogeochemical cycles in the Anthropocene. So each of these words signifies something for the talk I'm going to share with you today. Let us start with an interesting picture. All guys must be excited, though she's in hospital now for COVID-19. And I always claimed, like, if I keep these two pictures, the second one is mine, you can see clicked in right, Dona Palagoa. And I always claimed, if I believe these two pictures are same, how many of you would believe this? I know there are people are laughing, but I have a strong logic, believe me, that every matured human of weighing 70 kilo plus minus are composed of nothing but the basic elements. So we may look different, we may eat different, we may behave differently, but the basic composition of all matters are just with oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and even you can see in the pie chart that what kind of elemental composition we have. And that tells us that we are all from universe, right? After the Big Bang as we started. So these elements keep cycling within the earth, and that is why we say bio-geochemical. Before bio, like the life form appeared on earth, there was only geochemical cycles. After the interference of life, everything changes drastically on earth. And after that, after first photosynthesis started, the coupling between bio-geochemical cycling started to happen in a very, very rhythmic way. Well, no one said it. It happened according to evolution space and time. And what we see today is after more than 400.
Sorry to interrupt. Who is Bhaskar? Bhaskar Bhaumi, please stop presenting.
Okay.
Please maintain the decorum, please. What is happening? It is very irritating for the speaker to speak. Dr. Bishwas, please continue.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. No, it's fine. Okay. So as I said, that everything was going on according to its own pace, the evolution, and then the life appeared. We have death and excretion. We have the birth and ingestion, and all together, the complexity of ecosystem developed over all these years of Earth's age. And today, after just human interference happened on Earth, everything is going in a very different way than that what happened in the past. If I show you a very simple scheme of biogeochemical cycle, like how this big thing happened in the global cycle and the global scale. So we have in the sea water, we have lots of microscopic organisms who are fixing the carbon and also including other elements, and then they are sinking down to the oceanic bed, and then that organic matter is so slowly getting subducted to the crust, and then it is converted to lava, and again it is coming up through the volcanism. So this is a very big picture of how a single molecule of carbon, when it enters, how it is getting recycled. And that scale can be various depending on the element. And carbon and nitrogen, they are lengthy. The cycles are lengthy and complex and involvement of lot of processes. And we have phosphorus and silicon cycle, which are simpler and short. There are cycles for every element. But why I emphasized in here only 4 elements, because these are the major cycles which are getting perturbed severely by human interferences. First, mainly the first 3, carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Now we need to keep in mind few things, like as I said, the balance is very much important for anything in the universe. The whole universe is existing because of balance, like no other planet is colliding with each other. Everyone is moving in their own orbit, and that is only because of the balance, their mass. And this is very important, that if you wander in nature, you will also find the balance is everywhere. However, coming back to this slide, you can see the Alfred Redfield, who was an oceanographer and realized a very exciting story about nature. The most of the marine organisms are having a fixed carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus ratio. How does it happen? who controls this? So we do not know. This happened with natural evolution. So C is to P is to N is to P ratio, like 160 to 16 is to 1, is a phenomenal number which exists all over in the oceanic environment and also most of the aquatic environment, and most of the organisms are happy when this number is in balance. This is very important to keep this number in mind. Then you can imagine if you change any of these numbers, so you make nitrogen to 34 and phosphorus to 5 and carbon to 90, there will be significant effects on the organisms because we are not maintaining the balance. This is a picture. As I'm talking about the balance, you can see this picture is called as Lady Justice. So she cannot see, her eyes are closed, but she has a balance in her hand. And as I said, the whole universe is in balance. But unfortunately, we call the term Anthropocene, that also you may recall I mentioned in my talk, that where you can see this picture is very much symbolic, the footprint, human footprint on Earth, where most of the natural processes are impacted by humans and the geologic age of man or the humans. And this term was coined by Paul Crutzen, so I had the opportunity to take a picture with Paul. He's a wonderful person. You can imagine a Nobel laureate, how it would be in our country. It's impossible to reach, but these people are so humble. And then he was explaining that how he came up with the concept of coining this name as Anthropocene, where most of the processes, natural processes, are impacted by human activities. Most of the elements are in the elemental cycles are impacted. So Paul Crutzen was the Nobel Prize winner for inventing the ozone hole in 1995. And now I told that the balance, this term eutrophication is also very important for all of you to know, because we are contributing every day, directly or indirectly, most of the time is directly, to disturb the balance. Eutrophication word means, eu means true and trophication means nutrient. So whenever a system is oversaturated with nutrients are called eutrophication, and this is happening everywhere. And that is why this phenomena is disturbing the balance of red field. And that is why we see different disasters which are happening all over the world. And this is again changing the carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, all cycles all over the globe. And we are getting impacted. That I will tell you in the next slide. Now coming back to the first cycle, that is active carbon cycle, please notice that this is pre-industrial cycle. So that means when industries were not there, you can see the scheme. There are only plants and natural sources of CO2 and natural sinks of CO2. This is very important to mention that every elemental cycle has certain sources and sinks, and the balance between the sources and sinks are well maintained by nature until and unless we interfered. And you see on the left side, in the left side yellow box, it is written fossil organic carbon storage was still more than 6,000 billion tons, that is 10,015 grams before pre-industrial, because we did not explore the coal and the petroleum reservoir. And the ocean is still was a sink for CO2, because ocean absorbs more than 30% of anthropogenic carbon dioxide. So this cycle from land to ocean, ocean to land, land to atmosphere was in a complete balance until we started putting our nose in every processes. Now I show, often in my lecture, I show these two pictures, where in the first you can see is a vast rainforest taken from the Amazon, and the second one is taken during my cruise in the open ocean, Arabian Sea. And I ask always, which system do you believe fixes more carbon? And most of the time the answer I get is the first, rainforest. But believe me, those people are not from oceanographic science. They probably miss a lot of excitement. And if you take just a liter of or 500 ml of water concentrate and put under the microscope, I know many of you know there is a wonder world. We call them as phytoplankton. It's wonderful shapes. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, Yogan. Your slide is not visible because someone has presented just few minutes back. So
Oh,
Sir, I
please,
think the slide is perfectly visible, but those who haven't got the slides, you need to pin the screen. Otherwise, it's very much visible to us. Those who have pinned the screen, it's very visible, and maybe a network issue, but I can record it very perfectly. And I think those who have pinned the screen,
okay,
it's very normal.
please, Dr. Vishwas, see if it is possible again to present my
so
slide.
you mean I should go out and present again?
No, 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 no,
You
no.
don't have
You
to go
just
out. You just stop presenting and start presenting again, if it is possible, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Okay.
I don't think now it is coming.
Ma'am, make it full screen. It is coming, but it's not full screen.
Okay. Now?
Yes, ma'am, it is came. Please, everyone, pin the
Okay.
screen. Pin the screen. Please. Okay, ma'am, I
Shall I
think
continue?
yes, ma'am, you please start.
Okay, so there is a wonder world in the water. We do not know that there could be almost 10 to the power 5 to 10 to the power 6 or even 7 number of cells in a single liter of water. And these phytoplankton are very powerful and a significant contributor of carbon cycle, because when you see only the blue water, you do not know, but you won't believe only one group of phytoplankton can fix more than 10 billion tons of carbon in a year, and their productivity can be compared with the tropical rainforest as a whole. So you can imagine the immense power of marine system in carbon capture is really significant. And almost 30% of anthropogenically carbon dioxide is being trapped by marine ecosystem or marine phytoplankton, and then 1% of it goes down to the sediment, and then it remains for at least thousands of years before it comes back to the cycle again. And this process is very important and we call as carbon sequestration. And now the whole world is trying artificially to enhance this 1%, and we had never been successful, unfortunately. Now coming back to the in the post-industrial carbon cycle, you can see that now lots of industries developed. Now the cars, vehicular pollution, and the fossil fuel reservoir also is going to be over in some centuries, and we're in a urgent need to invent some biofuel which is not from the coal or petroleum. And as a whole, we emitted significant amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and we cut down most of the natural sinks, that is the vegetation. We destroyed most of the forest lands, and that is why most of the lands are becoming from the sinks to source. And this is the way we again disturb the balance in carbon cycle. So carbon cycle is one of the mostly perturbed cycles on earth, and consequences are immense, and we are suffering day and night for that I will show you in the next slide. So you all might be knowing that there are continuous monitoring of CO2 in several time series station in the globe. So Hawaii Ocean Time Series is one of them, and Mauna Loa Carbon Observatory. So they have the record from 1960s to till 2020, and you can imagine all greenhouse gases. The first panel shows the IPCC synthesis report: carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. These all gases present in the atmosphere can trap significant amount of heat. We call them as the greenhouse gases. So their radiative forcing, that is holding heat holding capacity, is quite high, and their concentrations are increasing significantly after the post-industrial revolution. And then you can see the carbon cycle has a very definite trend of increasing from the post-industrial to pre-industrial part. And if you see the last or the right hand panel, it is written weekly value from 5th July. So this month beginning, it is 415. So congratulations, we have made this from 280 pre-industrial, we made it to 400 only because of anthropogenic perturbations. And you can see the weekly value from 10 years ago was 390. When I started my PhD in 2001 and 2002, we continuously measured 380, 360, depending on the season, atmospheric CO2, and now we cross 400. And the last oceanographic cruise, when we had been to Arabian Sea, open ocean, you can imagine, throughout is above 400. So that means we have already perturbed the carbon cycle everywhere. And there will be consequences, right? Because the atmosphere is in direct contact with the sea, our carbon dioxide is getting dissolved in the sea water and changing its carbon chemistry very quickly. So it forms carbonic acid, and then it dissociates to bicarbonate and hydrogen ion. And that is why you all might be knowing, I think Sam talked yesterday about ozone acidification and the background chemistry. So it shows a continuous decreasing trend in ocean pH and enhancement in dissolved carbon dioxide concentrations after 1990s. So not only atmosphere is changing, but we are also changing the ecosystem. And the consequences of, we call it as ocean acidification, because the pH of sea water used to be in the alkaline range, which is moving slowly towards an acidic range. That is why we call as ocean acidification. And almost 30% enhancement in hydrogen ion concentration has been already noted in the global oceans. And the consequences are immense. I'm sure yesterday you might have experienced from Sam's talk. Now, when you come back to the other greenhouse gases, you can see that there is a nitrous oxide, and then the fluorinated gases are really dangerous, and their concentrations are also increasing. But the major player is definitely carbon dioxide. And you can imagine this is the global average of carbon dioxide, the green bar. So there is a very clear tendency of increasing from 1990 to 2010, and then 2020 already we are there. So we know it is 415, and the bar is again higher. Now this is very interesting to understand from where this much of CO2 is coming. You can see the road and transport is car, trucks, buses, the public transport is only 16%. And the major part is more than almost 45% is coming from electricity and heating. I request you all to think, when you take a lift, when you climb a 2-floor stored building, you can climb it up, right? And then we are going to the gym, which consumes significant amount of power. Everything is driven by electricity. So you can imagine the fuel combustion, non-road transport, manufacturing, construction, ship, everything. Our TV, electricity, mobile phone, data generation, data center, refrigerator, iron, everything is significantly contributing to emit this much of CO2. And our comfort is now costing the damage to the environment. I think all educated citizens must feel it. We have lived our life in a very selfish manner, and that is why today we reach this. Now, please see very carefully. This is a record of past thousands of years before, the temperature reconstruction and CO2 from the ice core. So you can imagine in the ice core, carbon dioxide and air can be trapped for many millions of years. So now they have constructed over, you can see here, 420,000 years from Vostok ice core from Antarctica. And it has been shown that there was a shift from a high temperature and low temperature over a definite period of time. But there was a time which was not controlled by anyone, but that was nature's control. This is the only time when we cross that limit. So 380 to 280 atmospheric CO2 change was a natural cycle. But now we have perturbed it completely. And that took millions of years to change it. And now we have changed within hundreds of years from 280 to more than 400. So since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, 350 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide have been emitted into the atmosphere, with a commitment rise in this atmospheric CO2 of 43% over the past 150 years. This has never happened in the history. And you can imagine the consequences. And very, very important to understand, the fossil fuel was trapped in Earth's interior, was it took millions of years to form coal and petroleum, and now we are taking out and burning it, and the rate is 10 to the power 6 times faster than the rate of accumulation. And that is the main cause of accumulation of net CO2 in the atmosphere, because its natural sinks are vanishing, and then the existing sinks are not able to capture this much of carbon from the atmosphere. So we all know that the climate change and global warming are two coupled terminologies, and this, because of accumulation of this much of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, we all experience the heat wave, right? So the last couple of years, at least in the last 10 years, and particularly I live in Goa, this has been a decade. This hot summer I never experienced before. It was beyond tolerance, 40 degrees. And this is going to happen, and the consequences are not so easy to handle that we experience. So now everyone is discussing, we are going to be 3 degrees or 2 degrees. If we do not control the emission, there is no other way. Only one. If you plant even trees all over the globe, this is not going to help. The only way is to stop emission if we want to live, or if we want to live the next generations. As I said, the consequences are not so easy to handle. So land is not alone getting warmer, right? Ocean surface temperature is increasing. And you won't believe, the last time I come to the next slide, that what has happened. The ocean is warming, and the meaning of warming is a warm water will always be lighter and will remain on the top. And for that reason, the denser, cooler water that is at the bottom, and the natural mixing, which brings the nutrients from the subsurface to the surface, is getting disturbed everywhere. So now this is a very recent paper on global stratification. That means the water column has been stratified all over the globe, and you can see the tropical Pacific and Atlantic, even in the Indian Ocean, that from the first picture 1960s to 2017 and 2010 to 2017, the rate of increasing stratification is highest ever. So this is a challenging thing. We cannot go and fix, right? We cannot get a technician and fix it. We change global cycle. Now you can imagine the thermohaline circulation, which controls even the season at several countries, is going to be changed, and already has been changed. If we are not careful now, we have to really pay in our own coin, and that is not going to easy. I think you all can recognize this picture, Amphan, which we experienced only few weeks back. And I don't think I need to tell the consequences. Before Amphan, the highest temperature of Bay of Bengal was recorded for the first time by Indian Meteorological Department was 30 degrees. The buoy temperature 30 degrees, and all over heat wave in all over South India, heavy rainfall, and we all know what has happened. Like our Sundarban is devastated, lot of people lost their homes, and economic damage and natural damage, better we don't discuss. We all know what has happened, we experienced. And when you just focus on a small part, like a city of Calcutta lost only 5,000 trees over a night. You can imagine the loss of carbon. These old trees, which are more than 90 years old, were fallen, most of them, because they had never experienced 230 wind speed in their lifetime. Those trees standing for hundreds of years, but this much of heavy wind speed is never tolerated. This is a small example of what we're going to face frequently if you don't change your lifestyle. So we are all responsible for that. We damage the environment. And now, as I said, it's a balance. Newton's third law never fails. Every action has its opposite and equal strength reaction. So the nature is now giving us back, and we are not ready to accept it. Now coming to the next element is the nitrogen cycle, where again human interference very heavy. And you can imagine, I am also giving the link for this paper so you can access and read if you want in detail. So you can imagine the nitrogen is one of the important elements, as I showed in the first picture, that we know all our DNA, RNA, and the proteins are made up of nitrogen, and we all need protein, right? Because the base of life is based on our enzymes and proteins. And human interventions like combustion of fossil fuel, burning vegetation, and then the uses of fertilizer, everything part of nitrogen cycle heavily. How? I will show you in the next slide. So you can imagine the nitrogen cycle, there are several processes because nitrogen is a gas which has a triple bond. So we cannot take nitrogen directly like we do for oxygen. Nitrogen can be fixed only via chemical process or certain prokaryotic organisms who can break the bond, and it costs 16 ATP to fix one molecule of nitrogen. So energetically, it's a very expensive process, and the dissolved inorganic nitrogen is present in the form of nitrate, nitrite, and ammonia, and which is usually driven by completely microbial activity. So the microorganisms are the key player to run this process. And this is just an estimate of how much nitrogen is trapped where. You can see the atmospheric nitrogen source is quite heavy. Sediment is equally enriched with nitrogen. And then dissolved nitrogen is present in the ocean as 20,000 into 10 to the power 9 tons of nitrogen is fixed there in the ocean. And this nitrogen moves from one reservoir to another, but it was in a balance until and unless we disturbed it. So this is just a scheme to show that how the nitrogen is flowing from one reservoir to another and what are the processes which are controlling. We all know during lightning some amount of nitrogen can be fixed as ammonia which comes to the rainwater on the sediment, and again this is in the dissolved inorganic form, so plant can absorb it. We are dependent on our nitrogen source either on plant or animal, but plant can access nitrogen directly, and some plants can absorb when it is present in dissolved inorganic form, and some microorganisms can fix it. So this nitrogen cycle, it was also in a complete balance, and you will not believe this biological nitrogen fixation, which was 58 teragram nitrogen per year in the pre-industrial case, has been tremendously increased in the post-Anthropocene or post-industrial periods, because we are using fertilizer to increase the crop demand to meet our food demand for this much of population. So global nitrogen cycle is one of the cycles which has been mostly perturbed by human interferences. Please see carefully, this graph is a gray color. Here we have the teragram nitrogen, and you can see we have record from 1990s to 2000. And the gray bar area, which is with gray shade, which shows period of explosive increase of coastal eutrophication, because that is the time everywhere agricultural revolution started. We realized if we are growing population, we need to have more food, we need to increase the crop production. And that cannot be happening naturally, since once a crop cycle is getting over, then the nutrients are gone. So we should rest it for a while and then again cultivate. But we don't want that. We want consecutive crop cycles with lots of production. So then human brain, again, the intellect, which is responsible for all this mess, started to use synthetic fertilizer, and that led to change in this large deviation from the red fill ratio. And you can imagine this, the dissolved inorganic nitrogen by river has the red color is denoting the predicted increase, and the blue color is what is happening. So you can imagine 1950, especially East Asia and South Asia, you can imagine the predicted increase, because China and India's population and their activities, they are responsible for this much of nitrogen to come to the aquatic environment. And in the next slide, I will show you how. You will be surprised. Moreover, we all know, right, our lifestyle, the chickens, I think these days kids, they don't eat anything except chicken. Vegetables are nothing to even look at it. And I don't know, everywhere I experience it. Please be responsible and look at the slides. So number of chickens, carcass weight, and the egg production per animal from 1961 to 2008 on global scale has been increased. You can imagine It's an almost double, more than 30 to 40%. You can imagine 4 to 20 is a 5-time increase. It's a number, carcass weight, and the same thing with cattle and buffaloes. Because we need more meat, we need more burger, and as I said, that we are never happy with whatever we have. So our greed, human greed in every aspect, is making the environment just unlivable. And this is again the projected number of bovines, that is the cows and the sheep and goat for 1950. So this is the projected value. And you can imagine here on the right side, we have the different country code. So when you have West Asia and North Asia, and for the Pacific countries, you can see the projection is very high. Not only that, altogether the black bar, which shows when the human population is not in check, we are going to increase these populations or the cultivation of all these, and they contribute significantly for nitrogen and phosphorus pollution, because the meat industries, all the biodegradable garbage, they produce significant amount of nitrogenous product in the that kind of wastage material which we directly throw in the environment. And for that reason, you can imagine the how much change we experience. I will show another slide after I show the phosphorus cycle. Coming to the phosphorus cycle is relatively easier, and here just a simple description of how it moves. Most of the phosphate is trapped in the rock and the phosphate form, and we also get phosphate from fish because they consume from the aquatic environment. And the phosphate concentrations in different oceans are also slightly different in Indian Ocean, Pacific, and Atlantic. And now this is the global phosphate reservoir on Earth. You can imagine the sediment holds the maximum amount. Then we have land in the biological form, ocean, deep sea, oceanic biota, and the atmospheric. However, now I will show this slide where you will see how important is to understand when we use phosphate or nitrogen fertilizer. This is valid for both. So global phosphate input from mineral fertilizer, this is synthetic, man-made. We react like Haber-Bosch process, ammonia, and like we make ammonia with nitrogen and hydrogen, and also equally for phosphate. Now most of the fertilizers are composed, like they contain everything. So phosphate mineralizer fertilizer, I just put 3 red boxes just to give you a feeling. If we are using these 17,000 gigagram per year, only crop can remove 12,000. And the phosphate surplus, which is already available in the land, will be almost half of it, 11,000. So 50% of fertilizer remain unutilized, and finally total phosphate output is 13,000. So that is again coming, you can imagine, from all agricultural lands which are on both the sides of the rivers are getting washed up to the river system, and then finally it is going to the sea. And you won't believe me, the fertilizer of the world population per river basin, the world phosphate load, you can imagine this figure. The brown color indicates more than 10 gigagram of phosphate. And you can imagine this is just the index with the agricultural industrial. How much you can imagine the picture with India and also the Europe. Because to increase and cope up with our population, this much of phosphate, and not only the detergent-based phosphate, phosphate-based detergents are also very important sources of phosphorus pollution for the coastal water. So we use dishwasher, we use now the washing machine, and we put more soap to make it more clean, and we have lots of these days advertisement for washing our utensils with Pril and then the body soap. Every fertilizer is having phosphate, and every synthetic dishwasher or any kind of detergents are having phosphate. So you can imagine this much of phosphate is getting washed and going to the finally sea. So people say, scientists, they have defined, they call gray water footprint, like the amount of phosphate is needed to make a water to be polluted. So this is an index for gray water footprint, and this is because of phosphate. You can imagine again India, the picture of India doesn't look good, and China and Europe as well. So we 2002 to 2010, so we contributed enough for phosphorus pollution on the global scale. So now when you look at the country-wise bar pie chart, you can see that China contributes a significant part, and India is still 8%, but not less. And now, when we summarize the global anthropogenic phosphorus load to freshwater and associated grey water footprint, because finally from freshwater it is coming to the sea, you can see the domestic usage is more than almost 55%. So this is significant, and then the other sources are there. So we are mostly responsible for our lifestyle, and this is the country-wise. You can see Asia contributes more than 50%. So we are polluting not only atmosphere, but also very responsibly water. We did pollute. So what we have done in the past 150 years, we changed Earth from a very green, wonderful landscape to this. And these generation kids are fan of this, and I really wonder, without getting into contact into nature, they just love these stuffs, which is absolutely artificial, and what all they want to eat is this junk thing. And you can connect and imagine that our changing lifestyle is largely responsible for today's perturbation. And all types of pollutants are finally related to overpopulation and lifestyle. So it has been predicted Indian population is going to be more than China soon. I hope you guys are responsible. At least think and tell your friends to think, and don't go to McDonald's and KFC to eat those junks. Have food inside, increase your immunity, and help the environment in that way. We all can contribute some or other way to preserve our environment. Be sensitive. If you are not going to the environment, don't feel it, I don't think your life is complete. And the consequences, as one simple thing I say, see, the base is the phytoplankton, right? As I showed the picture, which is present in the sea, and they fix enormous carbon. The fish population is always, Bengalis, they always like to eat fish. And the herring or the incorvi or the tuna or our hilsa, they are all dependent on this, and they have preference. They eat biochemically. And if you disturb red fill ratio, which you have done, then this base of food web is changing, and you can imagine the consequences are quite horrifying. So you can see the top picture where every process was going on the left hand in the natural way, on the right hand in the more industrial way. Earlier we had lots of fishes, we had normal plankton, we had the oxygenated sediment, we have crab, we have shell, everything. But as we are coming to the Anthropocene, we change the red field. So we have jellyfishes instead of our hilsa, and we have anoxic sediment. We have hydrogen oxide emission from the sediment, H2S, which smells very bad and harmful, and we have toxic algal bloom. This is also another consequences of eutrophication, which I didn't want to elaborate here, but to give a feeling with this, I will wrap up that these are going to be the consequences, and we should not complain now. Chital fish, which was very famous, is not available anymore. The river salmon or hilsa is not available, or many local fishes are just gone because of over enrichment of nutrients in the system. All our domestic nutrients, fertilizer, pesticide are coming from the agricultural field to the ocean and the sea, and that is why the natural population and the system is largely perturbed. So if you are responsible as citizen, you have to also act accordingly, because we believe we lived our life and we should live a better world for the next generation, right? This is the social responsibility when we promise to live a better world for the next generation. And with this, the main message is we have to conserve nature somehow. Otherwise, you see what we're facing with Corona. And that's not so nice, right? We're all trapped in our home, and we destroyed all the jungles and all the animals. We killed most of them, the diversity. The sixth mass extinction is happening in the Anthropocene. We call human-induced annihilation. And if you don't realize it, I think more pandemics are going to come. Thank you very much. Sumit?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deep, for your
I
nice
hope I kept my time.
Yeah. Absolutely perfect. So now I request Momita Bhumi, research scholar of Marine Ecology Laboratory, to say a vote of thanks and start the question and answer session.
Ma'am,
Thank you,
please
sir.
stop your
Thank you, Dr.
presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Vishash, for such a valuable talk. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for giving an excellent coverage on the topic as the part of biogeochemical cycles in the Anthropocene. We are fortunate enough to have her with us. It was mesmerizing to listen over the elaborated talk and get aware of the fact that how biogeochemical cycles of oceans are becoming perturbed, which is very alarming for our planet. We're all inspired by your great talks. Thank you very much. So now it's time to move on to the Q&A session. We have received so many questions over the chat box I can see. So due to time constraint, we cannot address all of those. So I've taken few among this lot. So the first question is from Megha Ghosh. She has asked that as phytoplanktons are the major carbon fixer of ocean ecosystem, can we use them anyhow to control the ocean acidification?
First of all, I should thank you for vote of thanks, and the question is very interesting and important. See, we're trying. I mean, a lot of experimental work is going on globally, and I do personally in my lab. And as you said, that's what people tried with the iron fertilization experiment, because we thought when there are certain places on Earth which are limited in iron, so if you dump iron, the phytoplankton will fix more carbon and there will be more sequestration. But it failed. They didn't work in that way. We are still trying to improve the performance in the enzymatic level, but still we do not even understand how it works. So the idea is good and people had it almost 30 years back, but till yet we didn't do anything successfully to manage the ocean acidification. I mean, to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere for a while. We have not done it. I mean, we couldn't do that. We tried, but it failed. Now people are trying to do with artificial upwelling, but that also did not show that much of promising results.
Okay. Another question from her is, you have told that even planting trees all over the world will not solve the grading problem.
No.
If we don't stop emitting CO2 even, but in today's world, is it next to impossible to stop emitting CO2 totally? So what's the option left for us now?
Okay, it's a good question again. I must say, see, only option is to stop emitting. So we have to shift to clean energy. That means the byproduct will not be CO2. That is why we are craving for biofuel. So in Germany and France now there are trains which are running in clean energy. So they are much ahead of us. And in India also we started slowly, not in large scale. If you plant all over the world tree, you can imagine the forest ecosystem will stabilize. So that will have a maximum capacity to fix carbon, and then again it will regenerate because every organism respires too. So you have to keep in mind, we have to increase the sink and we have to decrease the source which we disturbed. So first thing what we have to do is cutting down the emission. So the industrialization, shall we stop? So that is why alternative energy is so important. We will not stop because we just started our industrial growth because other Western countries are much ahead of us. And also please keep in mind, one carbon dioxide molecule, once it enters the atmosphere, it has a lifetime of hundreds of years. And you can imagine the CO2 which was emitted by the Americans or the Europeans, we are suffering for the 40-degree temperature for them because our CO2 which we emitted is just recent years, India after independence. So I would not say the stop growth, but one important thing you can link what is happening during this COVID-19, we are forced to be trapped inside the home. I believe the scenario will not go as business as usual. There will be something else which will stop us to emit CO2. We know that 17% CO2 emission reduced during this COVID time. So I believe something like that will happen. Many big scientists believe that this is not going to be business as usual. We must go for clean energy or we must reduce our grid and we should check our population. But I believe something else will come up, which will again make us to stop.
Okay. Next question is from Tonmoy Nondi. Does the excessive amount of CO2 emission help phytoplankton for their better growth and development in the ocean surface?
It's also interesting question. Not for all, it depends, because there are several types of phytoplanktons like diatom, dinoflagellate, coccolithophore. We have blue-green algae or the prokaryotes, and we have many other groups. We have haptophytes. Those are coccolithophore. So the calcifying algae showed sensitivity, whereas most of the cases diatoms, and you might be knowing that many phytoplankton grow on bicarbonate. So they take bicarbonate, they convert bicarbonate to carbon dioxide, and then they fix it through carboxylation. In that case, which we experienced in the Bay of Bengal experiments, for example, whenever we increased PCO2, growth increased. But in the case of Arabian Sea, in the shelf water, they don't care. I mean, whenever you increase up to even 1500 microatmosphere, the photosynthetic rate didn't change. That means they don't care, but they need to handle the problem of low pH, so they might respire more. So a few phytoplankton may benefit from increasing carbon dioxide level, but not necessarily all. And we should also keep in mind CO2 alone is not increasing. Parallelly, that is why I mentioned stratification, warming, and oligotrophication. Because of more stratification, nutrients are becoming less. So the global assessment is saying that global phytoplankton biomass decreased over the last 30 years. So there are also two very important papers. They say that the global decline in phytoplankton biomass in the all over the ocean. So this is not general trend. One place it could increase, another place it could decrease. So all over it may balance or increase or decrease. That is why we are trying to do with this core working group and with the multiple stressors. So now only CO2, if we consider, it may not help. We have to combine with other stressors, and that is why we are trying to fix a strategy how best we can do an experiment so that modelers can use and predict for the future to set some goals for the policymakers.
Okay. So next question is from Arya Chakraborty. She has asked how the carbon content of phytoplanktons can be measured depending on its length, body length.
I think there are some papers where people worked on pure culture, and they have a different shape and volume. So per cell picogram carbon can be measured. So either you can culture in your lab and you have 1 liter of water, you have 10 to the power 5 cells per liter. You filter it and you measure the entire POC content and you divide by number of cells. And this is the normal way. But if you want to do a volumetric way, what people also do, they measure the bio-volume of the phytoplankton and they use that to divide to the total organic carbon biomass. There are different ways of doing, and you may get literature also on that.
Okay, so last question of this today's session from Triporna Chakraborty. Is there any relation of bioluminescence with biogeochemical cycles in the marine ecosystem?
Oh yeah. I mean, there are people who work on bioluminescence. So this is also an ecologically important. We know the luciferin and luciferase. So their enzyme luciferase that reacts, especially when you disturb. We see wonderful bioluminescence when you go for the cruise. It's like the whole sky with stars, and this enzyme is used for many biomedical researches, the illuminescence that has been used. But can you repeat the last part of the question again?
Is there any relation of bioluminescence with the biogeochemical cycle?
Yes, okay. So, no, I thought it was climate change. Of course, with the biogeochemical cycles means they use phosphorus because it's an energy emission, right? They produce light when you disturb certain organisms. Even microorganisms, even some squid, they show bioluminescence because that is their way of capturing their prey. And also in the deep sea, several fishes, they have bioluminescence, because in the deep sea the light is permanently low or no light, it's a completely dark. So certain fish they use. So in one way, if you think, definitely it helps to flow the carbon from one to another trophic level, and also to mineralize phosphate because it forms ATP to ADP while converting this luciferin luciferase.
Okay, so with this question, I want to close the QA session.
Okay, thank you very much, and
Okay,
I hope that Yeah, please let me know if there are further questions. I'll be
Yeah,
happy
yeah.
to answer them.
Just a small declaration for the participants that we have collected all their queries and ensure we'll send them to the speaker via email. If ma'am, you don't have any problem,
No,
I
no, no.
can
Please
share.
do send in my Gmail so I can
Okay, okay,
answer
ma'am.
them with time. Yeah, may not be immediately, and
Okay,
but
ma'am.
with the time, I will definitely try to answer them. And I
So,
request all the participants to keep in mind that be environment sensitive. That is the only thing, I think, the only education which we should have now, because we are experiencing what could happen in future. If you don't want more Amphan, so please act responsibly. Thanks a lot, Sumit, for this. I really enjoyed talking in this forum. Thank you.
okay,
Thank you,
ma'am, and
Dr.
all the participants, as ma'am said, that we also assuring you that our speaker will try their level best to attend all their questions, and accordingly, we'll may post at our MEL website all their queries. So,
Yeah.
furthermore, each of the sessions will be available on our YouTube channel for further viewing. On behalf of Marine Ecology Laboratory and Aquafield, I would like to express my gratitude to our eminent speaker, Dr. Hurmanti Vishwas, ma'am, for giving her valuable time and sharing her thoughts. We're so grateful, ma'am. Finally, I extend my big thanks to all the members of Marine Ecology Laboratory for their continuous support and hard work to make the session successful. Thanks to all the registered participants and all the audiences for the cooperation and support. Thank you very much. So, dear participants, please stay tuned for the next session starting at 1:30 p.m. sharp by Dr. Chandrama Mukherjee, Presidency University. And the respective link will be sent in their Telegram group. So, thank you very much.
Thank
Over
you
to you,
very
sir.
much. Okay. Bye bye, all.
Thank you, Dr. Vishwas, for your presence, and I should say that you readily accepted my invitation just within one day. So I'm really grateful for this. And this Aquafield group has been formed. You'll be glad to know the spread the awareness of aquatic ecosystem preservation, because future generation is in our hand, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
So in that sense, I think your presentation will be very much motivating for the all the participants. And I think, as you told, we should react and we should be responsible.
Exactly.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you
presence.
so much, and bye, all. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
All the participants who are there in this Gmail meeting platform, please note, please join the group before the scheduled time, please, because in between many requests are coming. I cannot accommodate all because it is popping up these messages. So please join before the scheduled time, and the link will be sent at least 20 minutes before at the Telegram group. So please join, and don't try to join when once the session is started. All the videos will be uploaded, so don't feel bad that you missed something. Everything will be uploaded soon after the completion of the each session. And another request, please, while you are entering in this platform, please switch off your mic and video, please. It happened once before, the presentation link went because someone was started presenting. So I request you again, please be responsible and follow the decorum of this platform. Please, please try to do that. Thank you all for your active participation and enthusiasm. See you in the next session. We'll start at 1:30 by Dr. Chandrama Mukherjee, Presidency University. Thank you all, one and all.